why you know what to do but don't do it. We often like to believe that we don't take actions because of the fear of failure, fear of rejection, so on and so forth. But psychologists have found something deeper. And they understand that human beings have an innate need for belonging. As in, everything that we do is because we want to belong. We want the acceptance of people around us. We want love. So subconsciously, although you may have the aspirations for success, you may want to be a speaker or create content, so on and so forth. If these actions go against your safety for belonging, your support, the love you currently have, your subconscious mind may possibly resist taking those actions. That's why intuitively you may know what to do, but don't do it because of the fear of what will change. And so in order for you to start taking those actions, we need to understand, where did these fears come from? How do we work against these fears? How do we rise above these fears, these beliefs, this resistance? Therefore, you can take the right actions and not experience that pain. Because at the root cause of this, if you were to take those actions, if you were to succeed, if you were to create the life that you want, get to the next level, your life will completely change. But what will change as well? Oftentimes, we know, historically speaking, successful people say that their family, their friends, their immediate social circle oftentimes went against them and said negative things. Oh, you think you're too good for us now. Oh, you're Mr. This, you're Mr. that. Oh, life is so easy for you. This creates a negative belief of the possibility of if you were to take those actions. So therefore, your life, being that it will change, you will experience a death. And human beings, our brain is wired for survival. Maslow hierarchy of needs explains that the first foundation of everything, primitively, instinctively speaking, is the need for survival or physiological safety. So if subconsciously we believe that if we were to take these actions, no matter what they are, to help us get to the next level, we would experience a death. We know that dying, we like to believe, right, that dying is painful. We don't like to believe, but we just, death is often painful. So why would our subconscious mind want to experience a painful death? Okay. So we need to understand that a belief, what is a belief? A belief is a mental conviction. It is the acceptance of something without actual proof or evidence. It's an idea that was put onto us, oftentimes by our immediate environment, friends, family, parents. Something repeated so often impressed upon us that this is true. This is what a belief is, right? It's a mental acceptance, conviction. So beliefs is the foundation for our actions. It's the fact that we believe in something being possible is what's going to reinforce or motivate us to take those actions. Because if we don't believe in the possibility, we're not going to take those actions. It wouldn't make logical sense, right? But in this example, if we had a belief, if we were to take an action, right? So in this example, there is an action that you want to take, but you can't seem to take it. So if we have the belief that a specific action will manifest as a painful experience, right? And our subconscious mind being the default hidden hand behind everything that we do. Why would our subconscious mind feel positive about the actions that you know you need to take? It wouldn't. Because again, our body, our brain, is physiologically created for survival. Our brain, number one priority is safety, right? And so there's a misalignment here. So in order for us to take new actions, we need to change this equation, right? Instead of belief, positive action, negative pain, this needs to turn into belief, action, reward. Because if our subconscious knew that if we were to take a specific action, we would get rewarded for it, being that human beings have a natural need for belonging, social acceptance, for love, right? We would take those actions. But in this case, you know of actions to take, but you don't take them, you don't apply them because of what? Because of the belief. A belief that you're going to experience pain. Where did this belief come from? Again, beliefs are mental convictions. So oftentimes there's enough evidence. In this case, right, there is more evidence going against the actions you know you need to take. As in, if you were to start creating content of you showing your lifestyle, possibly your parents in the past, when you told them that idea, they reprimanded you. They put fear into you and say, oh, don't do that. They are stalkers, so on and so forth. What they did was they made you feel something against a positive emotion. They made you feel pain, fear. They possibly resented you. They possibly brought the idea you shared with them over and over and over until you changed your, not only did you change your action, but you changed your sense of self, right? Sense of self. Identity. And so now you want to rise out of this reality that you're in. But again, our subconscious mind is what reinforces our behaviors, right? And our brain is designed to keep us safe. If we were to make new changes in our reality, it will only create a death. And so in order for us to take new actions effortlessly, with ease, right? Well, we need to create a new belief system. And ultimately, this belief system has to be that these actions are not going to manifest as something painful, but more as something positive. And it's going to ultimately be a positive new identity. Positive, rewarding. So this equation, the missing piece of this, and I'm going to explain this soon, is we need to change the evidence, because it is the lingering experiences that you have had oftentimes earlier in your childhood development that reinforces the belief, because the belief is something that you are mentally convinced that this will happen. But if we can create new evidence, and oftentimes this is what psychologists do, right? When they're trying to change the behavior patterns of someone experiencing pain or resistance in their life, right? We need to create new supporting evidence to ultimately create a new belief, a new action. So how do we do this? Okay, so let's say if you were to go see a psychologist, what they would help you do is expose the unconscious and bring it to the conscious. As in, they're going to help you identify why those patterns in your thinking occurs, which manifests itself as the actions that you take, right? So in this case, the way in which they help someone break out of a fear is called shock therapy. So let's use the example. You're an entrepreneur, right? And you sell products. Now you want to start speaking. You want to put yourself out there. You want to show your lifestyle, right? Maybe you have very strict parents, and your parents have had a strong hold on you. They possibly put a belief that there's danger in the world, right? What this may cause, what is typical out of this example is for you to feel that if you were to start sharing your life, your parents would reprimand you. But again, a belief is a mental acceptance. It's a conviction. So there has to be historic evidence of your parents neglecting you. So shock therapy is exposing or giving you yourself the painful experience, but in small amounts. Therefore, your subconscious mind can begin putting on an armor to create the change, right, that you want to create. So shock therapy is small amounts of pain. And ultimately, what this will do is this will help you begin walking a new path, or creating that internal change, because you're able to rise out of the fear. All right? Now, the second way typically psychologists would help someone is through it's like blowing up the fear. I've used this method a few times. Blowing up the fear is, for example, let's say I have a friend, and my friend was feeling threatened to lose his job. He thought he was going to lose his job. I don't know if he was a part of a situation. Maybe something went against the company's rules and regulations. He was relatively new to that company. And I don't know if he worked there for a year or something like that. But his manager was supposed to help him, and he didn't. And within that week, he felt that he did something wrong. And so he had a fear of losing his job. And I can tell by speaking to him that his emotional response was so heavy in fear. Fear had a strong hand over him, right? That when he would go to work, it manifested as a nervousness, as an anxious energy. So what I did was I applied this method, and I said, you know what? Let's make this real. You lost your job. Now what? Because the number one thing he was afraid of was losing his job. Okay, so let's make it real. Let's jump to that reality, that timeline. You lost your job. Now what? So I started asking him a series of questions. What would happen after he lost the job? So I asked him, do you have 3 months of savings? And he said, yes. I said, do you have a place to live? And he laughed and he said, yes. I said, can you eat? Can you survive? Do you have somewhere to sleep if you were to lose your job? And he laughed and he said, yes. Okay. And I asked him even further, okay, well, can you survive for a year? Yes. And then what I did was I looked for evidence of historical timelines, historical events. And I asked him, has he lost a job before? He said, yes. Did he get a new job after he lost that previous job? And he said, yes. So what resulted out of blowing up the fear was the belief that even if this worst case scenario were to happen, it wouldn't be as bad as he was imagining it. So by blowing up the fear, we rise out of our imagination, our negative thinking about the possible painful experience. In this case, you wanted to take an action, but you don't do it, being that it would go against your belonging. Your environment will change. Your friends and family may possibly react differently towards you. Well, that's going to be painful. But if you were to blow up that possible reality, that timeline, and let's jump towards it. You know what? Okay, I'm a success now. Okay, my friends are going against me because they think I'm a hot shot. My mother and father, they don't entirely like me not working a job because now they believe I'm not stable. All right, by you using this exercise, you're able to rise out of your own imaginative, fearful thinking and see much more clearly. Because oftentimes it's our imagination, it's the emotions, the possible emotions that keeps us clouded and we don't see clearly. Right? Because truthfully speaking, if you were to rise to success and if people were to react negatively to you, those people were never meant to be there with you in the long run. And how can I confidently say this? Well, I say this because up until this point, using this entire video as an example, right? You've been living how the world wants you. You've been living how the world desires. Because you've been conditioned to take certain actions because of certain beliefs. And now you have a fear if you were to take new actions, you would become successful. So that will ultimately manifest as you living in your most authentic self, you being yourself. So if there's anyone that were to leave your life by you being yourself, they were never part of your authentic self. They were always tied to your baggage. They was always tied to your false self. And it is our false self that we need to defeat in order to take those right actions. Because it is the false self that is creating fear. It's not our authentic self. It's not who we really are. Because it is who we really are, which is inspiring us to take new actions. But it is the fear of the resentment. It is the fear of the psychological defeat, of the psychological death that is holding on to us, which is preventing change. And so my third way in which I help people using quantum mechanics is going into the imagination. Because again, a belief is a mental conviction, is a mental acceptance of something that has repeatedly happened, right? Oftentimes without proof. It's just something often repeated we take in as truth. And in this event, our parents, our family, our environment, they possibly reprimanded us taking certain actions when we were growing up. Now you feel called to take new actions, like grow your business, create more content, become a speaker, so on and so forth, right? But because in the past they reprimanded us, if we were to go into our imagination and if we were to start seeing them react positively and not negatively, right? What this would do is this would give us the feeling of acceptance. And again, our brain, our body, we are physiologically wired for survival, for safety. So we were to start imagining them react differently in our own conscious, right? Giving us the feeling of success, of love. This would again break the cycle of right action, no, right thought, wrong action, manifestation. In this case, you know what to do, but you don't do it. So, right thought. Now you have the right support, the right feeling, which is the imaginative thought. So that right thought you have to take the right action, you're gonna now take the action instead of knowing what to do but don't do it. Again, you know what to do but don't do it because of possibility of pain, of prehistoric evidence of pain. But if you were to go into your imagination, right, you would feel the support. Therefore, you would jump into the timeline in a sense where your parents always supported everything you do, where your friends supported everything that you do. They never neglected you. So if they never neglected you, there would be no resistance. And if there is no resistance, then there could only be an easy path. There would only be confidence in the actions that you desire to take. This would break the cycle that you are in and help you step into the next level.